When you have to shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Trap House Podcast. We got a great one here today. We're going to talk about our Kansas trapping trip. It's a two-parter, one before the trip and one after. We'll have Mike Huber on here. We're going to chat about a bunch of stuff. But first, we got to say thanks to the sponsors, Top Lot Stretcher Company. Check out their website. That's toplotstretcherco.com. They make the adjustable stretcher that we always talk about and support. But they have a whole line of trapping supplies, so you can go through their website, check their store out. Stuff for skinning and fleshing. They have some really nice push pins that they sell. You just surf their website, check it out. And also Hags Bracket. Jeff Haggerty supports us, and we support him, maker of the Hags Bracket there. His website is j3o.com. Check out their line of stuff. They got numerous great products, all American made, good stuff. Thank you, Jeff, for the support. Also, we have Weeby Knives, their website, weebyknives.com. Several knives to choose from, some with replaceable blades, fixed blades. They got this new setup for deer hunters. It's got bone saw in there with a gut hook and a couple other knives with it. Very reasonably priced, quality knives too. Can't say enough good about them, and I'm glad we have them on board. Also, got to say, last but not least, thanks to Hoosier Trapper Supply, supporting this podcast and getting this thing off the ground. Our website is HoosierTrapperSupply.com. It's the maker of Top Dog Predator Bait and Jet Fuel Predator Lure. We got trapping kits, everything you need in the trapping field, as well as deer scent. We do some taxidermy too. So if you're local or want to try us out, you can look us up, give us a call. All right. I think that covers it. Let's dive into the conversation. All right. We made it to Kansas. Thanks to Mike. Mike Huber's joining us today. Kind of hooked us up on some property out here. He's been out here for a while now. How long you been out here, Mike?
I left Thanksgiving Day.
Okay.
And I trapped some property over west of Wichita for about almost 2 weeks, and then waiting for the deer season to get over here. Then I come out to another 90 miles west from Wichita. So I've been here since about the 10th maybe of December.
So you've been at it for a while.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, you can backtrack. We've had Mike on before. I think it was our fifth episode we ever did. And it's titled Coyote Syrup, which is pretty funny because we were talking about coyote trapping, but at the same time we were talking with him, he was making a bunch of maple syrup at his house. So it turned into a clickbait title there. So people were like, coyote syrup, what the heck is that? I'm going to click it. So, yeah, go back and listen to that. And we talk a little bit about Kansas on that episode as well. And now we're here to do it in real life. What do you think, Charlie?
Yeah. So, Kansas is kind of, for me, Kansas is kind of, the first out-of-state trips I ever took was to Kansas. Back when Jake was very young, second and third grade. Came out here for 4 seasons in a row, and then we switched gears and started going to Arkansas. But so yeah, it was, and we were south of Wichita at that time, kind of off the Flint Hills. So it's nice to get back out here. So
yeah, so this is my first time. How many years you been coming out here, Mike?
I think 99 was my first trip. And that was just for like 3 weeks, and I got the number of one of the ranchers out here, and just gave him a call, and he said, "Yeah, come on out." And so I only had one name as far as reference to where to go when I got out here, and then he drove me around, showed me a couple of his properties, and introduced me to another rancher or two, and so the next morning I, set traps on those guys, and then I went to look for this other property that he introduced me to, and got lost and ended up at a dead end street and some old house down there. There were some cattle around, and the cowboy came out and wanted to know if he could help me. And I said, well, I'm looking for so-and-so. So, well, he's back the road a couple miles, and said, what do you need him for? I said, well, I'm supposed to go trap on his property. He looked at me and says, well, you want to trap here? And
That's nice.
that's kind of the way people are out here. They just, if they're not feeding it, they want it killed. So I was happy to oblige.
That's great.
I could probably take you right to the very spot I caught my first coyote out here. And I know I could take you to the spot I caught my first bobcat. So that's one of the reasons I came out here, because, bobcats are pretty cool, and we can't trap them in Indiana, and there basically weren't hardly any back in '99 that I knew of. So came out here and haven't missed a year since. This is I think about my 22nd year.
Man.
So Mike, just to give a reference, you want to talk about how many you've caught this year?
Now, we're forcing him to do this. He's not bragging. We're forcing him to cough up the numbers. He keeps a good logbook of the history he's been here, and it's got several pages on it full of catches.
I need to catch 4 more to make 300 even
for this trip.
Plus the ones I caught in Indiana before I came here. That does include those. That was like 75 or something like that. But along with, I think I got about 80 coons. And I know coons aren't worth much, but I got a guy that'll buy the big ones. So if they didn't weigh 20 pounds, I just threw them away. So I've got some coon skins in there that is almost 50 inches long, probably from nose to tip of the tail. And I've caught 70 some skunks and 31 bobcats. Really wasn't targeting bobcats, only a few, but they just kind of show up in your coyote sets when you least expect it, because they're out here too. But it'd be kind of hard to target bobcats as warm as it's been, because they kind of operate in the same area the coons and possums do. So you might find a good bobcat trail or set, but you might have to catch 4 possums and 6 coons and a porcupine before you can get a cat.
It's worth it.
Oh yeah, I never get tired of seeing them.
How many badgers have you caught this season here?
I think I only got 7 or 8 badgers. I think last year I had like 17, but I can take them or leave them. They're pretty neat, but they're kind of a pain to skin and flesh.
They are a pain to skin and flesh.
Yeah, if they can be dead for like 2 hours, and when you cut into them, they just start bleeding all over the place, and you can't hang on to them. They're so slippery.
Yeah.
Now, Charlie, when you were out here years ago, did you guys catch badgers?
Only caught one.
One?
Mm-hmm. And that area wasn't particularly known for Mike, because I specifically looked it up. Of that part of Kansas, I guess, wasn't so.
This being my first trip out here, I really would like to catch a badger. I've never caught a badger. Got to check something off the bucket list. So
if the ground's pretty clear and there's not a lot of brush, you can come up driving on your set, and you can see, a quarter of a mile away that you've got a badger, because there'll be a pile of dirt.
There'll be a crater.
Yeah, crater. If their hind foot caught, they'll be sitting on a pile of dirt about 3 feet high. And if you catch them by the front foot, they'll be in a hole that you could almost crawl into. It's amazing how much they can dig with just 1 foot.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting, Mike, was you got your logbook here from over the years and how it started out, what you were catching 22 years ago versus what you're catching now, because you didn't catch coyotes when you first came out here.
Not very many. And you could only keep about 1 out of 10. They were just had mange so bad.
So what have you seen?
So they once they got over the hump of the mange, then they just evidently just started reproducing.
Yeah. I think so.
and just kind of blew up population wise.
They're probably about as. Now I caught close to 300, maybe back in 2012, I think. But I mean, I had probably out of those, it was like 286, I think. I probably threw 60 or 70 of those away because of mange. This year, I think I've thrown about maybe 16 away because of mange, which, I can live with that, I guess.
Yeah, that's not too. I mean, percentage wise, that's not too bad. So that I wonder how long this population is sustainable at this level without just mange just wiping, getting them back to where it's going to square one again, and they have to rebuild.
I think if coyotes are going to be $5 or $10, it's not going to be very long before the mange takes over and they'll be wiped out.
Yeah.
If the coyotes were stayed at, $50 or $60, what they should be, it might be able to control it a little bit. Because everybody be after them.
Right.
So your 20-plus year history out here, what would you say is the biggest change from when you started to now?
I've lost quite a bit. The deer hunting is really getting more popular all the time. Everybody wants to come out here to kill a big buck. So I've lost, thousands and thousands of acres because the deer hunters, they don't want anybody else on the property. Even though it's not hunting season, they're so paranoid that somebody driving around on the property is going to chase all the deer away.
Even though you're there to help the deer herd, basically.
Right.
Trap the predators, and that's funny.
Now, one of the deer guides out here a few years ago, and if half of this is true, it's still phenomenal. That they set a camera up on a coyote den and recorded that pair of coyotes bringing 43 fawns in to those pups while they were raising them. So, I mean, even if half of that's true, if they've only brought 20 in, it'd still be a lot.
Yeah, that's
But,
great.
I mean, well, you guys have seen how many deer there are now.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean,
I've never seen it.
You see, like 40 or 50 deer every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And of course, they're all bunched up. I mean, if you see one, you're going to see 10 or 20.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. Definitely the most populated area whitetail that I've ever been in.
So, Mike, you're skinning as you go.
Yeah.
So you're hanging them off your hoist on the front of your truck. Whenever you catch one, you're skinning it.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, when the weather's warm, if I would have, 10 coyotes in the back of my box in my truck, and it's 70 degrees out, they're going to be spoiled the time I get, back to where I'm staying to skin. So I started doing this several years ago. Just as soon as the coyote's killed, hang him up and skin him on the spot. And the smaller ones and medium sized ones, it's almost as easy as skinning a coon when they're warm, and if they've got a lot of fat on them especially. But there's still, you get those little rangy males that got their teeth all wore down, or a female that's no fat on her. They can be kind of a problem, especially if it's like 4 degrees out and the wind's blowing.
Well, that's the good thing about skinning them on the spot, and they're warm. Keeps your fingers warm, at least.
Well, to a point.
Better than skinning a cold one.
At least you got a warm truck to get in and warm your hands up. But yeah, there's a world of difference between skinning one that's just freshly killed versus one that's been riding around the truck all day long. That's all stiff. It's all, I'm not going to say it's easy, but way easier than doing a stiff one.
Yeah. Well, we were out with you when the first day. You start running early, well before light, 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So we went running with you, but we didn't leave till 5. But you had caught 2 in the dark, and you're skinning in the dark with a headlamp.
Right.
So
yeah. Yeah, if you don't, you got to put them in the cab with you and drive them around for a while.
There was 3 people in the cab. There was not room to be.
And I like to keep my cab, pretty clean, Ha ha ha.
I've never seen a trapper's cab very clean. Although I got to say, yours was. Maybe you knew we were.
Wasn't that bad?
Yeah, I detailed it before you guys went out.
You must have one of those air fresheners up.
I came back
it smelled like a skunk.
I came back one year and it was pretty messy. And when I got home, a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you can take it into town and they'll detail that for $130 the whole truck." So I said, "Okay, I might try that." So I went in there and $130. Just leave it. Pick it up tomorrow. We'll have it ready for you. I came back the next day. Gave me the bill. It was $160. I say, "Hey, wait a minute. I thought it was $130. He says, "Okay, $130, but don't ever bring it back again."
Oh my gosh, that's great. So people listening, that haven't been trapping very long, and they hear numbers like this, are just kind of blown away. What could you tell people? What's what contributes to your success? How do you catch these kind of numbers every year? What does somebody have to do to achieve that?
Well, first you got to have them there to catch, and you can't just start at daylight and go. You got to get out at early and start running. Get all your traps checked by say noon or 1 o'clock, and then just set more traps. And I'm not real particular about my sets. They're pretty messy, but if you got some good bait, you can keep them at the set long enough to catch them. Then that's kind of the key. But I mean,
like Top Dog bait.
Top Dog is a good bait.
You got to put the plug in there, shameless plug.
If I didn't make my own bait, that's what I'd use. But so yeah, try to have everything the same. I've read this in the magazines, and I agree with it wholeheartedly that have everything standardized. Don't have a bunch of different traps and different fastening methods. Just make the same set over and over again. And
that set for you is what, dirt hole?
I make a dirt hole, and once in a while I'll do it a little different. But I dig a big hole. It's like a tile spade, but I dig probably a 5 or 6 inch hole and dig it as deep as I can, and bed the trap. Got these Duke 650s last year, which are a little too big for Indiana. They're not legal in Indiana, but to me they're a pretty awesome trap. Haven't had any trouble with them at all. So yeah. They
got really good jaw spread, and you said they bed really nice.
They bed. Since they're big, you can just make a pretty big bed and kind of put it in there and just kind of give it a little twist, and I use a large Ziploc sandwich bag for my pan cover, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it works pretty good. I usually bring a bunch of wax dirt and peat moss out and bed them in that, and then use wax dirt or dry dirt on top. But this year, I haven't used 1 teaspoonful of peat moss. I've used a little bit of wax dirt when I knew it was going to snow and kind of melt. But it's been pretty nice. This is a dirt trapper's dream, the way the weather's been this year.
Yeah, I can attest to that. It is bone dry.
Yeah.
And the only downside is some of the ground's about as hard as a concrete.
Yeah.
But other than that, it is.
I'll give you my pick that I borrowed off the guy that owns this place. That was out in his barn. When you guys go out tomorrow,
okay,
you can use it. Just put it back, I guess.
Okay.
But it helps.
Some areas are not bad, but some are just terrible. So tough to get much of a set made. And I will. We've seen Mike's sets, and yeah, he's making a big dirt hole. So, and he's hand digging those. He's not using an auger on a drill. So, have you used an auger on a drill, Mike?
Maybe once or twice, but it's not. I just don't. I try to carry as few tools around as I can. I've seen some guys trappers bags, and it looks like they're maybe gonna build a house while they're out there somewhere. They got everything from
build the fur shed after they catch all the fur.
They get everything from toothpicks to machine guns in that thing.
So basically, what you're saying is, bottom line is just lots of hard work and efficiency. Punching in the same sets, getting up early, going until you can't go anymore, and that's the bottom line.
Go to dark, and by skinning everything as I go, I don't have a pile of stuff to skin when I get back to where I'm staying. I just put everything in the freezers and come in and have some supper and go to bed.
And do it again.
Then get up the next morning and do it all over again. I don't think I've been doing for 40 some days now, and I haven't set my alarm clock yet. So just kind of anticipation. You'll wake up about every hour and see if it's time to get up yet.
I think just being around this my whole life, and the guys that set Mike and others like him, like you said, the animals have got to be here, but just that motivation to continually go day in, day out is the key to all this. Because a lot of times you'll get either discouraged, or you get tired, or you're not catching the animals,
or you want to give up when the weather's bad.
Just to motivate yourself and to push through that. I think that's probably a really big thing that separates you
from Justin,
from the rest of us. So yeah. So that it's 40 some days basically by yourself out here. So
yeah, all by myself.
Yeah.
So I think I've skinned close to 500 animals so far.
Yeah.
And I got one little nick on a knuckle with a knife, and that was it. So usually I'm got Band-Aids all over my fingers and got fingers infected with sand spur thorns, but so far I've been pretty lucky so far.
By the way, we got those sand burr things up in northern Indiana. We've got them in Indiana. That is a terrible plant. Yeah,
there's a little hook on the end of it. When it goes in, it stays in. But motivation. It's what I try to do. Is I was telling Charlie the other day. He says, if the hardest thing I think is when you have a bad day, and you haven't caught but one animal, maybe, or two animals, and you're just so discouraged. The hardest thing for me to do is just keep setting traps, but that's what you have to do. You have to realize, the weather wasn't very good for animals running that night, and they didn't run, and you don't tell yourself that they're not interested in your set, they just didn't run, and go buy it. So you just have to make yourself go out and make more sets, and it'll turn around sooner or later.
And then when you're making those more sets, you're setting up new areas that you're not already in. I mean, that's very key, because you can set more traps on the same property, and it's not going to really do you any good. I mean, where you're already at. So
yeah, you go to new property.
Right.
Yeah. New animals, and then when the weather finally straightens around, then you're going to start catching fur.
So, Mike, out here in this area, how, as far as the time between coyotes coming through, 5 days, 7 days?
Yeah, I think it's probably 5. That's an average, I think.
I think a lot of people get discouraged with that too. Is long times between the coyotes. And the classic line from a lot of guys is, "Well, shoot, I hear them howling every night." Well, you probably don't hear them every night, and if you do, they're not.
I can remember going into a ranch, and there'd be an inch of new snow that had fallen the day before, and overnight I come in the next morning, and there's just coyote tracks everywhere, down the 2 tracks, through the brush. They're just everywhere. So you get pretty pumped up, set a bunch of traps, and come back the next morning, nothing. They're gone. Says, wow, must be the bait. So you come back the next day, nothing. Next day, nothing. Then the 4th day, okay, there's 1. Then the next day, oh, there's 3. So it just takes them a while.
Yeah.
But
they say they can run up to home range of 10 square miles, but they probably only run 3 or 4 square miles at a time. But they can run up to that full 10.
And I'm a firm believer, once you set the trap and bait it, just leave it alone. Don't go rebaiting or reluring. Well, I use very little lure, if any. Mostly just bait. But don't, now if I get a possum, I'll rebait it just because, possum tore everything up and you want to kind of straighten around so it looks a little better.
And he might have
eaten the bait too. Yeah. But I don't rebait, or I just let it set. Like, I'll give you for instance, like this, I've had this one ranch set, just 2 traps, set them probably 10 days ago, and nothing. Well, then one day I noticed something had been digging at the side of the hole. So Charlie was here then, and he brought me some of his top dogs. So I said, well, put that in there, and 2 days ago, and go there this morning, and I had a double. So, and that was about a 10-day wait. But
they just finally came back through.
Yeah. But in the bobcats, they've got a better nose than what people really think. I mean, I haven't used the first drop of bobcat lure. It's just all, they're all mostly coyote sets, and if they are cat sets, I just use the same bait. But they don't seem to mind, and they got a lot better nose than what you think.
Are you when you are trapping bobcats? You're using visual flagging?
Yeah.
Do you how much do you think that helps? I mean, I know there's no definitive answer to that.
I'm sure if they can see it, if you got it hanging in an area where it's got, there's plenty of room for them to, if they're 100 yards away, they'll see it and come over. But I think I try to use it when I'm really making a bona fide walkthrough or cat set or something. I'll hang a flag up, and I just I take a big stack of CD discs and put them in my chop saw, cut them right in half. Then I glue some feathers on the end of it and hang it with a wire. Don't use fish line because the wind will blow and it'll just wrap up.
Right.
Twist up. You got to use some fairly lightweight wire, and then it'll blow around the way it's supposed to. But yeah, I tried using fish line one year, and that's a disaster.
Yeah. You can put sinkers on it and mess around with it, but just use wire.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier. Yeah. So, and it's easier probably just to have them all ready to go with the wire on it.
Yeah.
It's not a big tangled up mess.
You can just kind of wind the wire around the CD disc and go.
Where we go to in Arkansas, since we're on public ground, we don't do any flagging because it's just like, here's my trap. But then bobcats smell those sets, and we're pretty much generally making the same set for everything. So,
I mean, sometimes you have to be right on the track. I mean, you can't be 3 feet away, can't be 5 feet away. You got to be like a foot, and then you'll usually catch them because they could walk right by one 3 feet away and not even, think about it if the wind's wrong, for instance. But I try to set, if you can, set right, dig a hole in the trail where they're walking.
Yeah.
So you're setting a lot of traps, as much as you can handle in a day. How much can you handle? How many traps do you manage?
I'm probably running 100, 150 probably at one time. Maybe more. Maybe a few snares thrown in for, just something different. Find some good spots. But
with that many traps, have you ever goose egged? Didn't catch anything?
no. Not that I can think of. I mean, I think I've had a 0 day, maybe the first day that I got here. But
yeah, you
but
didn't
I
have
was-
all your traps out yet.
I didn't have but about 20 sets out, because when you drive straight through 900 miles and you get here at daylight and get things unpacked, you don't feel right going to bed, so you have to go set some traps.
What's your best day out here?
I had a lot of days where I caught 5 cats and coyotes 17. I've done that a couple times, but in the low teens pretty often.
In a way, it's always cool to catch a bunch of them, but on the other hand, then you got to skin all those too.
Yeah. I think the day I had 17 this year, they were all skinned when I got back to my cabin.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
It's we always kind of like to have the carcass picture at the end of the day, but that's a costly picture when it comes down to time. So
Yeah.
You just show the hides.
yeah, we'll just show skin animals. So
Yeah.
have you weighed any of these coyotes out here in terms of actual weight
No.
on a scale? I mean, they're not as big as our Indiana.
No, they're
coyotes.
not as big. I would say
25 pounds.
probably average 25 pounds. I've caught some monsters, probably weighed 40, but that's be a exception.
I mean, the coyote at home that weighs 40, which is not kind of unusual, but not. I mean, they do occur, but that's the coyote that the average guy thinks weighs 60 or 70 pounds, because you pick them up and it's heavy, but they only weigh 42 pounds is a huge coyote in Indiana, and here, that 25. At home, they're 28 to 32, I think, generally, maybe a little bit bigger.
And we were talking about this the other day, and you trappers can relate to this. It never fails. You go to the farmer where you're trapping, and they'll tell you they saw the biggest coyote they ever saw. And I bet every trapper out there agrees with me on that. So, yep.
He might have been part wolf.
Yeah.
It's a coy wolf and close to 100 pounds, about waist high.
But it's the biggest one I ever saw.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this, or I know we did on the last podcast, Mike. So you had trapped back in the 70s and 80s or 70s or whatever, got kind of discouraged because of all the trappers out there.
Yeah.
And then kind of left it for a while. When did you start again then?
Probably about that latest fur bust, 86, 87,
That's
something
when you
like that.
started again?
Yeah.
Okay. When everybody else was vacating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the 87, 88 season was that when things completely fell apart. So and then that at that time that was coons. Raccoons was the really big thing for you.
Yeah.
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 And then now it's everything. Coons, coyotes, whatever.
So we Charlie and I just got in. We've been here a couple days. At the end of this podcast, we're going to do a kind of jump in here and tell you how we done. Mike will be long gone by then, and I don't know. Well, hopefully we can produce some good numbers and have some good experiences. I'm sure we will.
Produce something. It won't be anything like Mike, but
no, we're not. We're not getting up at 4 a.m. if anyone's wondering.
Part of our issue with the getting up in the dark is to film any of it.
Right.
Which we're here to film this. So when we went out with Mike and we were trying to film it in the dark, it was not easy. Which we'll show you that this upcoming season, but that is definitely challenging when it's dark out to get any type of film footage. So,
I just get a kick out of driving up on a coyote and seeing the eyes shining 200 yards away.
Yep.
You know, jumping around, jumping up and down. And we were talking about this the other day. You come up on a bobcat, he just blinking at you. And so you can almost tell right away whether it's a bobcat or a coyote or a coon.
Yeah.
The bobcat just got bigger eyes and they're just brighter. It's like white light, looking at you.
And they are trying to blend into the ground, not even move a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah, you get there and you come up on them in the daytime, they're just hunkered down, and sometimes you don't even see them. Like I've seen the trap laying there before I saw the bobcat. They were so hidden and camouflaged.
Yeah, I've done that before too. Yeah.
I've heard of guys out here bird hunting, and their dogs come up on a bobcat in the grass, or they're pheasant hunting, and the dog will point it, and the bobcat won't move. He'll just say, hunker down, because he thinks he's so well camouflaged, they can't see him. And the hunter just come up there and shoot him.
But I guess on the other side of that, they very well are very camouflaged. I mean, they blend in really well.
Yeah.
You know, if they didn't have their eyes, that's the first thing you normally see is their eyes.
Right.
So
Yeah, I don't know how many times we've walked up to a set and, brush and disarray or whatever, and not just think either the trap's missing or set off, or not.
And then all at once,
And
boom.
it's right there next to you, just not moving, and
yeah,
you're in striking distance. Watch out.
pretty exciting.
I brought a couple years ago, maybe for 3 years in a row, I brought this young boy out here, and he was really into it. And I think we were checking some traps, and it was daytime. I had some snares set on this trail, and he was going ahead. He's probably 11 years old, and so he's up there, and he said, "Mike, I can't find the snare." And I said, "Tim, look to your right about 10 feet." And I think he had the cable. He was straddling the cable, and the cat was over on the other side of the trail, hiding in some grass. So he kind of backed out of there pretty slow.
But yeah, sometimes that can be very exciting. What year was that, Charlie? We were in Arkansas, and me, you, and Jake. Somebody had caught a cat down by the creek side, and we go walking in.
I think Jake actually caught that one.
Yeah, it was knee high or better grass, and noticed the trap was gone, but it was on the drag. So we just started walking through the grass. The next thing you know, that cat chased us out of that grass. We went running. I had part of it on film, but it wasn't the greatest film because we were running. Yeah, I'll never forget that.
The coyotes are most of the time are submissive. They'll just
Right.
sit there, and bobcats, they're always ticked off and
But when
will come after you.
once they get used to you standing there, you can usually go right up to them and put that snare around their neck,
Yeah.
and they'll just kind of growl and let you do it. And then, when you tighten it up, then hang on, like fighting a bass or something.
It's a catfish.
Catfish, yep.
So, what would you say Indiana versus Kansas, as far as, obviously it's different terrain. What makes it so much appealing, you think, to come out here? Is it just because the sheer numbers, or you just like the location and the way it looks? Is it more of that kind of feel, or all of that? Or just
Well, you've got two different animals that you can trap out here that are protected in Indiana, for one thing. Badgers and cats. And for one thing, there's been days when I haven't seen another car driving around
Yeah.
on these county roads. So,
There's no people.
There's no people,
it's nice to just get away.
and nobody really bothers you. Nobody's out there, oh, you killing those poor animals, But everybody seems to be pretty friendly, and it's not. I won't say it's super easy to get permission, but it's it's not too bad. Not like, home in Indiana, you might go to 10 different places and maybe only get 1 or 2 spots to trap. Then you got to deal with water, rain, and bad weather, freezing and thawing, and cleaning up mud-covered coyotes. And out here, everything's usually pretty dry and nice. And just
So,
And the one other thing, Mike, is if you're trapping for some level of income, these coyotes are worth more than an Indiana.
worth
coyotes.
more than Indiana.
yep.
And I got to thank my wife for letting me do this. She really doesn't complain too much. And
Yeah, you were gone during
she-
Christmas.
yeah, I left. I wasn't here at Christmas. So luckily, when I'm here at Christmas, there's always 2 or 3 of the ranchers will invite me over. One time I went to Christmas dinner, and then I went to Christmas supper. I think
That's nice.
the dinner I had was a traditional lunch, and for supper we had steak and crab legs.
There you go.
Can't beat that. Yeah, I'm sure over the years you've got to meet a lot of the locals. You told us a good story earlier about going into a pitch-in. You want to share that with the public? It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I go to church out here, and they had a pitch-in lunch after services, so I said, well, I ought to take something. So that Saturday before, I'd caught, 3 or 4 bobcats, and it was cool out. It was maybe even freezing, and they were still on the gut pile where I put all my carcasses. And, they were fresh, they were good, they were, touching anything. So I went out and peeled back straps off of 2 or 3 of them, cut them up, put them in a crock pot, cooked them overnight, put in a bunch of barbecue sauce, and time to go to church. I had my buddy, another rancher that was there. I said, JL, you carry this crock pot in, because if I take it in, they may be a little suspicious. But I went to the store and bought some hamburger buns and set them there, and everybody grabbed some. Then they found out it was bobcat. Some of them were fine with it and said it was good, and the other 1 or 2 other guys thought there was something a little fishy about it.
That's hilarious.
So,
And you didn't tell them until after everyone was done eating.
no, I didn't tell them at all. I let them. And I think Don Hauser was here that time.
No.
So he was kind of in on it too. He thought it was pretty funny. But we both ate it. I've eaten it before, so wasn't anything new to me.
Yeah.
And it's not like pork, but it's fairly close. More like, I'd say it's got more of a turkey taste to it than pork. But if that's all you had to live on, you could do it. As long as you had barbecue sauce.
It's amazing what a crock pot and barbecue sauce will do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had beaver that way, but not bobcat.
We had actually intended to do that with the bobcat a couple years ago, and somehow the backstrap got mixed up with some other stuff and got left out of the freezer.
You probably just wanted to make bait out of it.
Well, with that, it definitely is more valuable for bait than it is to eat for us.
Yeah, I've got a freezer full of carcasses for Charlie. It's probably a good thing, or I'd have to stay another 3 weeks to fill that freezer full of hides.
I don't know. Your wife, you always
Yeah.
she said, maybe 1 more week, right?
Yeah, I've been telling her that about a month. Okay.
So that you're approaching 300 on this trip. How many days did that take again, roughly? Since Thanksgiving? That'd be
What's the date?
40.
Today's the
If I think about 40, I think 42 or 43 days.
Okay. So you think at home, say if you were trapping at home and you had 40-something days to trap as hard as you could to catch as many coyotes, what kind of number would you be able to put up? Would you not reach 300?
I don't think I can average. It's hard for me to average, like 4 a day would be a good average at home, I think. 3 or 4 a day. But, thing thing about at home, you got other things to do when you're at home.
Oh yeah.
Here, there's nothing else to do. You just eat, sleep, and trap, and that's it.
Yeah. We tell that people, and we don't go at it as hard as you do. We're not leaving at 4 in the morning or anything, but that's what we tell other people. It's like when you're at home, you got all those other distractions and all those other responsibilities and all, So when you're on a trip, you're trapping. That's it. So
Yep.
Yeah. We're usually sun up to sundown, so
it's
that's what we do. What else? What else we got? Anything special? Got any good stories, Charlie, from when you were here in Kansas?
yeah. I think I've told it before.
Oh,
The guy I was out here with.
you might have told it on that last episode. I don't know.
We got here with, and he forgets his catch pole and didn't have a gun. Catches a bobcat. We're probably a mile and a half from the truck on 4-wheelers. I said, "Well, just smack it with your trowel. It doesn't take much."
Yeah.
He I don't remember if he just picked up a stick or if he had a short trowel. The cat was caught by the back foot.
That's not good.
No, and when he swung, that cat came up and just caught him on the back of the hand, went right through his glove. He had those big farmer leather gloves on that you buy, at the farm store, but it still went through the glove. And anyways, Jake, this is years ago. Jake and I were just stood there. He just gets on his 4-wheeler and just takes off. This guy. And Jake and I just kind of looked at each other and kind of laughed about it. It's like.
I've been bit by a coyote a couple times and coon a couple times, and been scratched by a cat a couple of times. Nothing serious. The coon's the worst one. They can just really, really gnaw on you. You almost have to go to the hospital.
That's a lot of power.
When you get a coon bite.
Damn.
I think on this podcast we would probably recommend that you go to the doctor or hospital if you do get bit. But everybody's could make their own decisions, but
yeah. Or have your tetanus shot up to date and all that.
Yeah. And if you are in that situation and you're concerned about rabies or another disease, you can actually call the health department within the county that you're in or whatever, and they will tell you whether there's rabies in the area or if there's anything to be concerned in that respect, because they usually have a very good idea where some of these disease levels are at. So if you are concerned, that is something that you can do.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be coming out here, but I'll be 70 in a couple of months, and I still feel good, but especially if fur prices get much lower than they are, it's kind of pointless, really. You've kind of made your goals and memories and all that, but
I don't know, Mike. Sometimes it might be harder to walk away from it than it is than to push yourself to do it.
Plus, you still got to get this red coon.
Yeah, that's true.
You might want to tell everyone that. That's a good story too. You might have what do they call that? The grand slam when you kill all the turkeys and then super slams and all that.
Well, I had
the super slam
years
coon.
ago. I caught it looked like a red fox. Red is the reddest red fox you would ever catch, and it was a raccoon. It had like a white mask and white rings on its tail, but the tail was red. It was red like a red fox. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I took it home and I think I just sold it to a taxidermist, and his freezer ended up going bad and he lost it. But then after that, I was coon trapping at home, and I had, everybody catches the black melanistic coon. They're pretty common. So they were pretty cool. So I had one of those full mount done, and then caught a cinnamon coon. So I had it mounted. And I think I've caught 3 albinos. So I had one of those mounted. So if I was to ever get a red coon, I'd have it mounted, and then a normal colored coon. So there you'd have 5 raccoons, all completely different from each other. And I thought that'd be pretty neat.
That would be.
For you hunters out there, that would be the super slam of raccoons.
Yeah, that's right. The super slam. That's great.
So, yeah, I caught one. It was red, but it wasn't nearly as red as what I wanted it to be. And it was kind of, it was kind of in the same. It was within 3 or 4 miles before I caught the other one. It was more of a rust-colored cinnamon coon, I think. It wasn't really red like a fox. And I've only caught, out in this area, I've only caught maybe half a dozen red foxes, and I've only caught 1 gray fox. That's been probably 15 years ago.
Here in Kansas?
In Kansas,
Okay.
yeah, in this area.
Yeah.
Probably about, I'd say probably 10 miles from here.
Yeah.
15 miles. So there's no, right in this area, there's no swift foxes, so I kind of like to catch one of those, I guess, sometime.
Yeah. They.
But no groundhogs here, but there are plenty of possums. Possums and a lot of hawks. I've been feeding the hawks really good. They love those coyote carcasses. They go pick the meat off the ribs.
So when you and this was it. So when you catch a coyote, of course you skin the coyote on the location. You reset the trap. How far do you drag the carcass away from your set?
Oh, about as far as I can throw it.
Not very far.
Yeah, like 20 feet maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. And another thing I'll mention too, and this, a lot of people find this kind of, there's so much controversy on scent at the set. I kneel right down on my knees lately. For one reason, I lost my kneeling pad. It blew out of the truck. But anyway, and I wear leather gloves to make the set, and I hardly ever take those gloves off. I'll if I catch a rabbit or something, I'll skin the rabbit, pull the skin off, and use it for attractors. But my gloves are just filthy dirty, and I just leave them on for my protection of my hands. And
Do you skin with those gloves?
I don't skin with those gloves, but
Okay.
I've got rubber gloves that I skin with. But everything I handle, just all my bait and everything with those same gloves, and I've had them. That one pair, I've used them the whole 40 days, and I've probably, I would say, less than 10 sets have the traps been where I could pretty much say it was a coyote kind of scratching at it, but maybe not even 10 times that a coyote has kind of scratched at it.
In your whole 40 days out
My
here?
whole 40 days out here.
Yeah, that's not.
That's something to be said.
And that could happen whether if you put clean gloves on.
Right,
too,
yeah.
So
And
Yeah.
you're most, now I've had a lot of them set off, which are, most likely 100% of the time deer. And then coons, of course, they'll kind of fool around with them, and they'll pull it out. If the trap's out of the bed and not set off, 99% of the time it's probably a coon. But if it's just digging at the side where the trap is and maybe uncovering a jaw, that's probably a coyote. But
yeah,
Yeah.
generally a coon, if he feels that jaw, he's going to pull it out of there.
yeah.
I mean, he's just going to be curious about it or
But-
whatever. So
My gloves are on about all, even driving down the road, I'll have the gloves on.
Yep, so you don't have to wear a hazmat suit when you're trapping. That's
I remember back.
that's
Now-
a myth.
One of the ranchers here that I'm real good friends with, actually him and his wife came to visit me back in Indiana a couple of years ago. He was going to try to trap some coyotes when he was younger. And he was telling me he'd read all about it and how you had to be really careful about your scent. So he told me he actually made a pair of stilts to walk to the set on stilts to set his trap.
You gotta be kidding me.
No.
That's why I'd never heard that one.
Yeah, he was wearing stilts. Now, I don't know what he did when he got there,
Yeah, you still got to get down. Man, that'd be great to have on video. We would have put that on the show. We'll get Charlie out there on stilts next season.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. Yep.
There was some crazy stuff that back in the 70s and 80s when everybody wanted to catch an $80 red fox and just over the top with that kind of stuff, because the information wasn't out there back then like it is now. So a lot of people took an idea and ran with it and it always got extreme, or a lot of times it did, so.
I guess, there may be some trappers out there right now wearing masks trapping.
Yeah. So, might be. So.
Well, appreciate the stories, Mike, and all the good info.
Yep.
I usually go up to Mike's house to pick up the urine that he collects and we sell at the shop, and he's always got something going on there on it. Show me around his fur shed and show me how he sets up snares or how he skins or whatever. And sometimes I get some maple syrup on my way out.
Yeah, that's only about a month away,
Yeah.
depending on the weather. So you have to come up and get that urine and those carcasses, and we'll make some syrup, have some pancakes.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and share this podcast anywhere that you think trappers or friends might like outdoorsmen. And stay tuned for part 2, and we're going to fill you in on how Charlie and I do this next week out here. See what happens. Mike's pretty much took the cream off the crop. So
Nah.
we're in some areas that he didn't trap, so we still have a chance. But should be fun. So we'll get back to you with that.
Well, you got the weather working in your favor, that's for sure.
Oh, it's gonna be beautiful.
That's
dry and sunny.
90% of it right there is the weather.
Yeah.
Dry
and sunny.
All right, we're back. Kansas trip went well.
It did. It was nice to have completely dry dirt.
Yeah.
They really haven't had any rain since July. So I feel bad for them, but it was nice for trapping. Other than the ground in some places was rock hard, concrete hard, which was a bit of a challenge, and it kind of wore you out trying to beat sets in. But that was the downside to the very dry conditions. A little difficult putting a dirt hole in a lot of places just because you just couldn't get much of a hole dug.
Yeah.
So.
And I actually did have one trap that was frozen down. It was in this little wash area. But that was it. Everything else there wasn't moisture in the ground. Even when I got cold in the teens, traps were firing in that dry powder dirt. So.
Yeah, and I kind of wondered if that wash area was, because we had got a Dust Bowl type windstorm one night, and then there was some snow with that. I mean, I'm talking a trace, but it because of the wind, it collected in some areas more, and I just wondered if that was, but that where you were set was pretty low. It was near a creek, so
yeah. But overall, I'd say we had a great trip. We caught a variety of species. We won't go in too much detail. We want you to watch Hoosier Trapper Outdoors now, so we can't be, giving all the secrets away. I'm sure if you follow along on social media, you've seen enough to know that things went pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty evident to me that on when we were setting and then check date 2 and 3 that we were not going to catch a lot of coyotes. I mean, just because you're in Kansas doesn't mean you're going to catch a whole lot of coyotes. I think Mike may disagree with this, but when you pull that many coyotes out of an area that there was definitely coyotes there still, but it wasn't like they were in huge numbers. So, not catching coyotes or a lot of coyotes was well compensated with what other stuff we caught. So, which made it a lot more fun. Catching stuff that we don't typically catch, so.
Right. And we caught stuff every day, at least.
Yeah.
Even on the nights where you'd be kind of guessing, got cold, but it had windstorms and full moon, that sort of thing, where you're like, I don't see how they would even get out and travel that much. And somehow you show up the next day and have something in your trap that's pretty crazy.
Right. Yeah, we had, dealing with full moon, we dealt with one day that started about 2 or 3 in the afternoon with literally dust bowl windstorm. I mean, severe wind, and you can easily see how that area was affected in the Dust Bowl significantly.
Yep.
Almost 100 years ago.
Almost right in the heart of it.
Yeah.
So right outside.
Yeah. I mean, we would be driving down the road. Of course, all the roads are gravel/dirt roads, and it would be like a blinding dust storm. You couldn't see. No, you could drive out of it or wait for it to subside just a little bit. It'd still be very windy, but it would subside enough where you could see. But it would be literally blinding dust. So, so anyways, the next morning we still even with that going on all night long, we still caught a couple critters. So, between that and the full moon, it was not the greatest way to end the trip, but
right. Did you have any surprises, Charlie? Anything that kind of caught you off guard while we were out there that, anything come to mind? Or is everything about what you expected? Because you've been there before, so you kind of had...
Right. I wasn't, I wasn't really surprised with anything particularly, I would say. I don't think I had any real surprises. It was where I was at before was more eastern Kansas, which was in the Flint Hills, and was a beautiful area. This area here was more western, and it was a very pretty area. Very cool to be trapping in the area that we were in. Some agriculture to the north of us, and then they plant a lot of winter wheat and milo, but then a lot of the area we were trapping in was just fields of where they just let it grow up in grass, so it was all just rolling hills and grass, which
and grazing cattle.
Yeah, so lots of cattle ranches. So we didn't have the advantage of trapping any cattle feedlots. You'd see the classic pictures of guys catching a bunch of coyotes right outside of a feedlot. So, but I don't know. It was no great surprises, but I thought it was a good fun trip. So it's always nice when the weather cooperates.
Yeah.
Other than the Dust Bowl.
I figured it was going to be a little more flat, but since I haven't been in this portion of the country, that we were far enough west where it had that western feel to it more.
Oh yeah.
Less than,
I mean, really though, just north of us 5 miles, it was flat.
It was. It was. We just got into a pocket, and that was the first time I've caught. I've seen them over the years, but that was the first time I've caught coons of this size, western coons.
Yeah.
Because, when we were in New Mexico and places like that, we weren't in areas where there were coon.
Right.
So, that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's a big raccoon out there. Nice straight-haired raccoon. So, for those of you that hopefully saw, what was it, episode 13? 12 that we just put up?
13.
13, episode 13, Hoosier Trapper Outdoors. I actually showed the comparison between an eastern raccoon and a western raccoon, and the western raccoon was from Kansas. So for those of you that want a visual, take a look at the last, well,
13.
episode 13, which would technically be the last episode that we put up. If you're listening to this the day we put it up. If that makes sense. But anyways, go back, episode 13. There's a good comparison of western and eastern raccoons. So, but no, that's about it, I guess.
Yeah. It was a good time. Mike was nice. He cooked for us a couple mornings.
Yep, Mike was a good host, and we appreciate. Shout out to Mike for inviting us out, and
Yep. He did.
put us on some ground, and so.
Earlier in this podcast, we talked to Mike about numbers, and we'll just go ahead and let the cat out of the bag on that. He did hit the 300. He hit 301, then he had to leave. So
Yeah.
you know, I think things kind of slowed down for him because he was wondering if he was going to make it or not before he had to leave. You know?
Yeah, he was kind of sweating it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you're averaging 8 or 9 coyotes or seven coyotes a day, then the next thing you know, it's like, all right, here's one trickling in, maybe 2 the next day, and then finally got there. But yep, shout out to Mike. Basically, all we can say is our next trip, we're heading to Arkansas, so stay tuned for that. And that will almost round out the season for us. There's a few beavers around here. We're going to, or at least I am. I don't know if Charlie's going to have time or not, but we're going to knock a few beavers out and call it a good year, call it a good season, and get ready for convention season.
Yep.
So we hope you guys enjoy the show. Please like and share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you on the next one.